The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Taemin stepped onto the landing platform of the Galactic Council station. Behind him walked his daughter Bora, who held his hand tightly. Her eyes were wide as she looked at the massive space station around them. Ships from 100 different worlds filled the docking bays. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Bora was 7 years old. This was her first time away from Earth. She had read about aliens in her books, but seeing them in person was different. A tall blue creature walked past them. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like stars. Bora squeezed her father's hand. "It's okay," Taemin said softly. "They're just people like us, just different on the outside." The welcoming committee waited at the end of the platform. Taemin recognized Ambassador Velnus from the Synthari delegation. The Synthari looked like tall gray beings with large heads. They were known for their logic and intelligence. Next to Velnus stood Elder Krath from the Vrixian people. The Vrixians were insect-like creatures with 6 legs and shimmering wings. Elder Krath's 3 cubs stood behind him, their antennae twitching with curiosity. But the most impressive sight was the honor guard. 6 Krathan warriors stood in perfect formation. The Krathan were massive beings, nearly 8 feet tall, with thick purple skin and powerful muscles. They wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the station lights. On their heads sat ornate helmets decorated with precious metals and ancient symbols. These helmets represented centuries of military tradition. "Welcome, Ambassador Taemin," Velnus said in perfect English. The translation device on his collar flickered. "We are honored by your presence." Taemin bowed respectfully. "The honor is mine. Thank you for inviting my daughter. I hope she won't be a bother." "Not at all," Elder Krath clicked. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "My cubs are here as well. Perhaps they can play together." The 3 Vrixian cubs peeked out from behind their elder. They were small, about the same size as Bora. Their wings were still developing, not yet strong enough for flight. The smallest one waved a tiny claw at Bora. She smiled and waved back. The reception hall was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow lights across the polished floor. Diplomats from across the galaxy gathered here. Some had fur, some had scales, some seemed to be made of pure energy. Long tables held food from different worlds. Strange smells filled the air, some pleasant and some not. Taemin began his rounds, greeting various ambassadors. Bora stayed close to him, watching everything with interest. The Vrixian cubs followed Elder Krath. They seemed restless, their legs clicking impatiently on the floor. Young creatures were the same everywhere, Taemin thought with amusement. He was talking with a representative from the Aquatic Collective when he heard the first shout. One of the Krathan guards had broken formation. His voice boomed across the hall. "Stop! Thieves!" The reception hall fell silent. All eyes turned toward the honor guard. 2 of the 6 helmets were missing from the guards' heads. The remaining guards looked around frantically. Their purple faces had darkened to almost black with rage. Near the back exit, 3 small figures scurried away. The Vrixian cubs carried the stolen helmets between them. The helmets were almost as big as the cubs themselves. They dragged them across the floor with excited clicking sounds. Elder Krath's antennae drooped in horror. "No, cubs! Return those immediately." But the cubs had already disappeared through the exit. The doors closed behind them with a loud clang. Chaos erupted in the hall. The Krathan guards roared in fury. Such theft was a grave insult to their honor. Elder Krath trembled with fear and embarrassment. The other ambassadors began shouting suggestions and accusations. Some demanded immediate pursuit. Others called for security. A few suggested diplomatic sanctions. Ambassador Velnus raised his long arms for silence. "Please, we must handle this calmly. This is clearly a serious offense." "Serious?" The lead Krathan guard's voice was like thunder. "This is an act of war. Those helmets have been worn by my family for 12 generations. My cubs meant no harm," Elder Krath pleaded. "They are young. They do not understand what ignorance is no excuse," another guard interrupted. "They must be punished. Severely." The argument grew louder. More diplomats joined in. The Synthari proposed forming an investigation committee. The Krathan demanded immediate justice. The Vrixians offered compensation and groveling apologies. Some species Taemin didn't recognize suggested various punishments ranging from confinement to public shaming. Through all this noise, Taemin stood quietly. Bora leaned against his side. She looked worried. He patted her head gently. Finally, Ambassador Velnus turned to him. Ambassador Taman, you have been silent. What is Earth's position on this matter? Surely you agree this requires swift action. Every eye in the hall focused on the human. The room grew quiet again. Taman looked at the angry guards, at the terrified Elder Krath, at all the concerned faces around him. Then he shrugged. They'll return them eventually. The silence stretched longer. Then everyone started talking at once. Eventually? The Krathan guard looked like he might explode. What does that mean? You cannot be serious, Velnus said. They have stolen priceless artifacts. They're kids, Taman said simply. They saw something shiny and interesting. They took it. Now they're probably playing with it somewhere. When they get bored or hungry or tired, they'll come back. Elder Krath's antennae perked up slightly. You truly believe this? I know this, Taman replied. My daughter once took my car keys and hid them in her toy box. I found them 3 days later. My nephew stole his mother's phone and buried it in the sandbox. My friend's son took his father's badge and, we do not care about human children, the Krathan guard interrupted. This is different, is it? Taman looked at him calmly. Your helmets are safe. The cubs won't hurt them. They're just playing. If we chase them, they'll think it's a game and hide better. If we punish them, they'll be scared but won't understand why. But if we wait, they'll return on their own. This is madness, another diplomat muttered. This is experience, Taman corrected. Humans have been dealing with children for a very long time. Bora tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, are the cubs going to be okay? They'll be fine, sweetie. He looked around the hall. If we all stay calm and let them be kids. The Krathan guards looked at each other. Their anger had not faded, but confusion had joined it. The other ambassadors whispered among themselves. This was not how diplomatic incidents were supposed to be handled. There should be protocols, committees, reports, and consequences. But Taman simply walked to the refreshment table and got himself a drink. He looked completely unconcerned. Bora stayed beside him, relieved that her father wasn't angry. Elder Krath approached them hesitantly. You truly believe they will return the helmets undamaged? I do, Taman said. Give them time. You'll see. The reception continued, but the mood had changed. Everyone kept glancing at the exits, waiting. The Krathan guards stood rigid at their posts, their missing helmets like gaps in a fortress wall. And somewhere in the station's corridors, 3 small cubs played with their shiny new toys, completely unaware of the diplomatic storm they had created. Security Chief Hyunwoo arrived at the reception hall 30 minutes after the incident. He was a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He had been with station security for 5 years and had seen many strange things. But this was his first theft case involving children. Ambassador Tae-min, he said, approaching the human diplomat. I heard about the situation. I've pulled up the surveillance feeds. Would you like to see where the cubs are? Yes, please, Tae-min replied. But we're not going to retrieve the helmets. Hyunwoo smiled slightly. I figured as much when I heard your statement. My supervisor is confused, but I told her to trust me on this. They moved to a quiet corner where Hyunwoo set up his portable monitor. Bora climbed onto a chair to see better. The screen showed a service corridor in the lower levels of the station. The 3 Vrixian cubs had dragged the helmets into a small alcove. Now they were trying to wear them. The helmets were far too big for their small heads. The first cub put one on and immediately tipped over sideways. The second cub clicked with laughter. The third cub tried to help, but the helmet rolled away. They chased it down the corridor, their little legs scrabbling on the smooth floor. Bora giggled. They look silly. They look like criminals, the Krathan guard said. He had followed them to the monitor. His voice was still angry, but he couldn't look away from the screen. They look like children, Tae-min corrected gently. More ambassadors gathered around the monitor. Word had spread through the station. Everyone wanted to see what the human was doing about the theft. Or rather, what he wasn't doing. Ambassador Velnus studied the screen with his large eyes. Ambassador Tae-min, I must ask again. Why are we not sending security to retrieve the helmets? This goes against every protocol. Because protocols are for adults, Tae-min said. These are cubs. They don't understand protocols. Then they must learn, another diplomat insisted. Tae-min turned to face the crowd. His expression was patient but firm. Let me tell you about human children. We have been raising them for hundreds of thousands of years. Do you know what we've learned? No one answered. They waited. We've learned that children explore the world by touching, taking, and testing boundaries. A 2-year-old human will put everything in their mouth. A 5-year-old will collect things that interest them. A 7-year-old will take things to play with. It's not theft. It's learning. But there must be discipline, Elder Krath said. His voice trembled. My people believe in strict rules for cubs. And how's that working? Taman asked, not unkindly. He gestured to the screen. They saw something interesting and took it anyway. Rules didn't stop them. Punishment won't teach them. Experience will, Hyunwoo nodded. My son is 6. Last month he took my security badge. I looked everywhere for it. I was late for work. I was so angry. He paused. Then I found it in his bedroom. He had been playing security officer, checking everyone who came in. He wasn't trying to be bad. He wanted to be like his dad. What did you do? Elder Krath asked quietly. I sat down with him. We talked about why I need my badge. Why taking it without asking was a problem. Then we made him his own pretend badge. He was happy. He learned. And he never took my real badge again. A female voice joined the conversation. My daughter took my research papers once. It was Dr. Min Seo, a xenobiologist. She had been listening from nearby. She wanted to draw on the blank sides. She didn't know they were important. I explained. She apologized. We got her a proper sketchbook. Problem solved. Another human stepped forward. Engineer Daejung was a quiet man who usually avoided crowds. My nephew hid my tools in his toy box.
He was building things.
He needed tools. He didn't know he shouldn't take them. We talked, his parents got him kid tools. Everyone was happy. The pattern was becoming clear. The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Human children took things. This was normal. Expected even, and humans handled it with patience and explanation, not punishment and anger. This is so inefficient, Ambassador Velness said. The time wasted. The explanations needed. Surely punishment would be faster. Faster, yes, Taman agreed. Better no. Punishment teaches fear. Understanding teaches wisdom. On the screen, the cubs had given up trying to wear the helmets. Now they were using them as drums. They banged on them with their small claws. The sound must have been very loud in that corridor. The smallest cub was dancing in circles while the others provided percussion. Several of the watching diplomats made sounds of dismay. The Krathen guards looked like they might have heart attacks. But Taman laughed softly. See? They're having fun. They're bonding. They're being kids. The helmets are fine. Metal can handle some banging. My ancestors wore those helmets into battle. The Krathen guard protested. They survived plasma fire and blade strikes. And now they're toys for cubs. Your ancestors would probably find this amusing, Taman said. Warriors understand that life needs joy, especially for the young. These cubs will remember this as a happy day, and your helmets will have a new story. Bora had been watching the screen intently. Now she looked up at her father. Daddy, when will they come back? When they need something, Taman said. Cubs and children always come back when they need something. What do they need? Elder Krath asked. He seemed genuinely curious now. Food, water, comfort, their caregiver. In that corridor, they have none of those things. They have the helmets, yes, but helmets don't feed them. Helmets don't give them security. Soon they'll get hungry or tired or want their elder. Then they'll return. Hyunwoo checked his chronometer. It's been about 40 minutes since the theft. Young cubs need to eat every few hours, Elder Krath admitted. They had snacks before the reception, but that was 2 hours ago. Then we wait, Taemin said simply. Ambassador Velness couldn't accept this. His logical mind needed structure. But what if they don't return? What if they damage the helmets? What if they get lost in the station? The station is safe, Hyunwoo assured him. I have personnel monitoring all exits. The cubs cannot leave the level they're on. All dangerous areas are locked. They're in no danger. And if they damage the helmets? The Krathen guard demanded. Taemin looked at him seriously. Then you'll be angry. I understand. Those helmets are precious to you. But consider this. Would you rather have undamaged helmets and traumatized cubs? Or possibly scratched helmets and cubs who learn naturally about boundaries? The guard opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his fellow guards. They looked back at him. None of them had an answer. More humans had gathered now. Word had spread that Ambassador Taemin was handling a situation in a uniquely human way. They shared their own stories. Children taking jewelry to play dress-up, Toddlers hiding car keys in flower pots, young ones taking phones to look at pictures. Every human in the crowd had a story. Every story ended the same way. The children returned the items. Explanations were given. Life continued. The alien ambassadors listened with fascination. This was a side of humanity they had never seen. Humans were known for their military strength and technological advancement. But this was different. This was cultural. This was how humans raised their young. I am beginning to understand, Elder Krath said slowly. Humans allow chaos because chaos is learning. Not exactly, Taman corrected. We allow age-appropriate exploration. A 3-year-old taking a shiny object is different from a teenager stealing. The cubs are young. They don't have malice. They have curiosity. Dr. Minseo added, in our studies of child development, we found that children who are allowed to explore, make mistakes, and experience natural consequences develop better judgment than children who are only punished. Natural consequences, Ambassador Velness repeated. You mean the cubs will learn because they become hungry and uncomfortable? Exactly, Taman said. We didn't have to teach them. The situation teaches them. They took the helmets seeking fun. They'll return them seeking comfort. They connect the two events in their minds. Next time, they'll think twice. On the screen, the cubs were now trying to stack the helmets. They succeeded briefly before the pile collapsed. The smallest cub got bonked on the head. It sat down hard and seemed to be considering crying. Oh no, Elder Krath whispered. But the other 2 cubs rushed to comfort their sibling. They nuzzled against it with their antennae. The smallest cub perked up and they went back to playing. Bora smiled. They're good siblings. Yes, they are, Taman agreed. He looked at Elder Krath. You should be proud. They take care of each other. The elder's antennae lifted slightly, pride mixed with his worry. They are good cubs. I just wish they weren't also troublesome cubs. All the best ones are, Hyunwoo said with a grin. 2 hours had passed since the cubs took the helmets. The reception had transformed into something unexpected. What started as a diplomatic crisis had become an impromptu cultural exchange about raising children. The Krathan guards remained at their posts. They still looked angry, but their rage had cooled to simmer rather than boil. Their missing helmets left obvious gaps in their formation. Other guards had offered to lend theirs, but tradition demanded they wear their own family helmets. So they stood with bare heads watching the monitor that Hyunwoo had set up in the corner. On the screen, the cubs were slowing down. Their energetic play had faded. Now they sat in their alcove, the helmets forgotten beside them. The smallest one kept touching its mouth with its claw, the universal sign of hunger. They are getting tired, Elder Krath observed. His antennae drooped with worry. And hungry. Good, Taman said gently. That means they'll come back soon. Ambassador Velness had been studying human behavior for the past hour. His logical mind was processing all the stories he had heard. I am curious about something, Ambassador Taman. If human children take things regularly, how do you maintain order in your society? Taman smiled. We teach them as they grow. A 3-year-old takes toys. That's normal. We redirect them. A 5-year-old takes cookies. We explain about asking first. A 7-year-old takes money. We talk about earning and permission. By the time they're adults, they understand ownership and respect. But that takes years, another diplomat pointed out. Yes, Taman agreed. Raising children always takes years. There are no shortcuts that actually work. Bora had been coloring at a nearby table. Now she came back to the group. Daddy, I'm hungry. Can we get food? Of course, sweetie. He looked at Elder Krath. Perhaps we should set out some food. Not as bait, just as normal hospitality. If the cubs smell it, they might return sooner. Elder Krath's antennae perked up. That is very clever. It's just being practical, Taemin replied. Dr. Minseo called over to them. She had been talking with a Vrixian scientist. Elder Krath, what do young cubs eat? I want to make sure we have the right food available. Sweet fruits and protein paste, Elder Krath answered. They need both for proper growth. I'll check with the kitchen, Hyunwoo said. He spoke into his communicator. Within minutes, station staff brought out trays of various foods. They included the items Elder Krath mentioned, plus foods for other species. The smell of fresh food filled the reception hall. Many of the diplomats helped themselves. Bora got some fruit and sat with Taemin. They ate quietly while watching the monitor. On the screen, one of the cubs lifted its head. Its antennae twitched. Then the other two cubs raised their heads as well. The smell of food must have reached them somehow. Perhaps through the station's air circulation system. The smallest cub stood up. It looked at the helmets. Then it looked in the direction of the reception hall. The other two cubs joined it. They seemed to be having a discussion, though the monitor had no sound in that corridor. "They are deciding," Elder Krath whispered. Everyone in the hall had gone quiet. All eyes were on the monitor. This was the moment Taemin had predicted. One cub picked up a helmet. Then another cub grabbed the second helmet. They started dragging them back down the corridor. Their movements were slower now. They were tired and hungry. The helmets suddenly seemed much heavier. "They're coming back," Bora said excitedly. "Yes, they are," Taemin confirmed. The Krathen guards straightened their posture. Their hands moved to their weapons, then stopped. They looked at Taemin. He shook his head slightly. They relaxed their hands but remained tense. Several minutes passed. The cubs were moving slowly. They had to stop several times to rest. The smallest one was falling behind. The other two kept coming back to encourage it. "They help each other," the lead Krathen guard said. His voice held surprise. "Even when tired and hungry, they help each other." "That's what good siblings do," Hyunwoo said. "Human kids are the same. My daughter always waits for her little brother when they walk home." Engineer Daejung nodded. "My nephew helps his baby sister learn to walk. He's only 4, but he's very patient with her." The aliens were learning something important. Human strength wasn't just in their adult warriors or their technology. It was in how they raised their young. With patience. With understanding. With love. The reception hall doors opened. 3 small Vrixian cubs dragged 2 large helmets into the room. They stopped just inside the doors. Their antennae drooped with exhaustion. The smallest one sat down hard on the floor. Elder Krath started forward, but Taemin touched his arm gently. "Wait, let them finish what they started." The cubs looked around the hall. They saw all the diplomats watching them. They saw the Krathen guards. The guards looked very tall and very angry from a cub's perspective. The smallest cub made a sound like a whimper, but then the cubs saw the food. And they saw Elder Krath. The largest cub called out in their clicking language. It sounded like Elder. The cubs abandoned the helmets. They scurried across the floor toward Elder Krath. He moved forward to meet them, and they swarmed up his legs to cling to his body. He wrapped his limbs around them protectively. "It's okay," he murmured in their language. "You're safe. It's okay." The helmets lay on the floor near the entrance, forgotten, no longer interesting. The lead Krathen guard walked over to them. He picked them up carefully. He examined them closely. The other guards gathered around him. "Well?" Ambassador Velnus asked. "Are they damaged?" The guard was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Some scratches. Small dents. Nothing that cannot be polished out." He looked at Taemin. "You were right, human." They returned them. "I told you they would," Taemin said simply. The guard nodded slowly. "You did, and I did not believe you. I apologize, no apology needed. You were protecting something precious to you. That's honorable." Elder Krath had carried his cubs to the food table. They were eating frantically, their small claws grabbing fruits and protein paste. Between bites, they clicked happily to each other. The crisis was over for them. They had their elder, they had food, and they were safe. Bora walked over to them with Taemin. "Can I say hello?" she asked her father. "Ask Elder Krath." She turned to the Vrixian elder politely. "May I say hello to the cubs?" Elder Krath looked surprised. "You want to meet them?" "After what they did?" "They're just kids," Bora said. She sounded like her father. "Kids make mistakes." The elder lowered the cubs to the floor. Bora knelt down to their level. "Hi, I'm Bora. Do you want to be friends?" The largest cub tilted its head. Its antennae touched Bora's hand gently. Then it clicked in its own language. The translation device on Elder Krath's collar spoke. "Friend, yes, play?" "Not today," Bora said. "You're too tired. But tomorrow, we could play games that don't involve taking things." The cubs seemed to consider this. Then all 3 of them clicked agreement. Dr. Minseo had been watching this exchange with scientific interest. Remarkable. The human child shows no fear and no judgment. And the cubs respond positively. "Children are honest," Taemin said. "They don't hold grudges like adults do. They fight. They make up. They move on." Ambassador Velnus approached Elder Krath. I must admit, the human approach was effective. I would not have believed it possible. Neither would I, Elder Krath admitted. My people believe cubs must be strictly controlled, but perhaps we have been too harsh. These cubs have learned something today. What have they learned? The Synthari ambassador asked. Elder Krath thought carefully. They learned that taking things leads to being alone and uncomfortable. They learned that returning to their caregiver brings safety and food, and they learned this through their own experience, not through punishment. Exactly, Taman said. Experience is the best teacher. The Krathan guards were cleaning their helmets with special cloths. The lead guard looked over at the cubs, who were now full and sleepy. The smallest one had curled up against Elder Krath's leg. I am still angry, the guard said honestly, but I am also impressed. The cubs returned the helmets themselves. They were not forced. They chose to return them. Choice is important, Hyunwoo said. When my son returned my badge, I praised him for making the right choice. I didn't focus on him taking it. I focused on him bringing it back. Positive reinforcement. Your human psychology is complex, Ambassador Velness observed. Not really, Taemin said. It's simple. Treat children with patience and respect. Set boundaries but allow exploration. Praise good choices. Explain bad ones. Every human parent knows this. Every human parent, the Synthari repeated. But this knowledge does not exist in most alien cultures. We could learn from this. The reception hall had changed completely. What began as a formal diplomatic event had become a casual gathering. Species that rarely spoke to each other were now sharing stories about their young. The Krathan guards were explaining their helmet traditions. The Vrixians were describing their child care methods. The humans were offering suggestions based on their experiences. And in the middle of it all, 3 cubs slept peacefully against their elder. The helmets were returned. No one was hurt. Nothing was truly damaged, and everyone had learned something valuable. Bo-Ra yawned. Taemin picked her up. Time for bed, sweetie. But I want to stay, she protested sleepily. Tomorrow. You can play with the cubs tomorrow. She nodded against his shoulder. Okay, Daddy, I like them. They're silly. Yes, they are. Just like all the next morning brought new energy to the Galactic Council station. Word of the previous day's incident had spread through every corridor and deck. Diplomats who hadn't been present asked those who were to retell the story. Some species found it amusing. Others found it educational. A few remained skeptical. Ambassador Taemin woke early as he always did. Bo-Ra was still sleeping in her bed. He smiled at her peaceful face. She had talked about the cubs for an hour before finally falling asleep. Today she wanted to play with them and show them her toys. After breakfast, they walked through the station. Bo-Ra held a small bag with some of her favorite toys. She had carefully selected ones she thought the cubs would enjoy. Building blocks. Colorful balls. A simple puzzle. Do you think they'll want to play? She asked her father. I think they will, Taemin assured her. But remember, they might play differently than human children. They have claws and antennae and 6 legs. That's okay. Different is good. They found Elder Krath in one of the station's garden areas. The Vrixians preferred places with plants and natural light. The 3 cubs were there, climbing on decorative rocks and chasing small flying insects that the station kept for ecological balance. Good morning, Elder Krath, Taemin greeted. I hope we're not disturbing you. Not at all, Ambassador. Elder Krath's antennae waved in a friendly manner. The cubs have been asking about the small human since they woke up. Bo-Ra stepped forward shyly. I brought toys. Do you want to play? The cubs rushed over immediately. They surrounded Bo-Ra, clicking excitedly. She giggled as their antennae gently touched her hair and face. They were being curious but gentle. They like you, Elder Krath said warmly. They are asking if you will teach them human games. Yes. Bo-Ra sat down on the soft grass. She opened her bag and showed them the toys. The cubs examined each one with interest. Taemin and Elder Krath moved to a nearby bench. They could watch the children play while talking. I must thank you again, Elder Krath said. Your advice yesterday prevented a terrible situation. If we had punished the cubs harshly, they would have been traumatized. But your way was better. I'm glad it worked out, Taemin replied. How are the cubs today? Do they understand what happened? I spoke with them this morning. In simple terms, they can understand. I explained that the helmets belong to the guards, that taking things without asking makes others sad, That if they want to see or touch something interesting, they should ask an adult first. Perfect. That's exactly right. Age-appropriate explanation. Elder Krath watched his cubs playing with Bora. I have been thinking much about human child-rearing methods. My people have always been strict with cubs. We believe that discipline creates order, but perhaps we have been creating fear instead. Every culture raises children differently, Taman said diplomatically. There's no single right way, but humans have learned that children need both boundaries and freedom. Too much restriction and they rebel. Too much freedom and they have no guidance. Balance is key. Balance, Elder Krath repeated thoughtfully. Yes, I see that now. Meanwhile, Bora was teaching the cubs how to stack blocks. The cubs' 6 legs made them very stable and their claws were surprisingly precise. They built a tower together, all 4 children working as a team. When it fell down, they clicked and laughed and started again. A shadow fell across the garden. The Krathen guards had arrived, all 6 of them now wearing their helmets. They stood at the garden entrance, watching. Elder Krath stiffened. I did not expect. It's okay, Taman said quietly. Watch. The lead guard walked forward slowly. The cubs noticed him and huddled closer to Bora. They remembered the tall, angry beings from yesterday. The smallest cub made a worried sound, but the guard knelt down. At his full height, he was massive and intimidating. On his knees, he was merely large. He removed his helmet and set it on the ground in front of him. Little ones, he said. His voice was much gentler than before. I am Guard Thren. I was very angry yesterday. I scared you. I am sorry for that. The cubs didn't move. They didn't understand all his words, but they understood his tone. Thren continued. This helmet belonged to my grandfather and his grandfather before him. It is very important to my family. When you took it, I thought you wanted to hurt it. But the human ambassador helped me understand. You just wanted to play. He pushed the helmet forward slightly. Would you like to see it? Properly this time? The largest cub looked at Elder Krath. The elder nodded encouragingly. Slowly, the cub approached Thren. It reached out one small claw and touched the helmet gently. Thren smiled. It was a fearsome smile with many teeth, but the cub sensed no threat. It's strong metal, forged in our homeworld's volcanic fires. See these symbols? Each one represents a battle my family fought. The other 2 cubs crept forward. Soon all 3 were examining the helmet with fascination. Thren pointed out different decorations and told simple stories about each one. The cubs listened with their antennae quivering with interest. Bora came over too. It's very pretty, she said. Like a treasure. It is a treasure, Thren agreed, which is why I was so upset. But I learned something yesterday. Anger doesn't teach. Patience does. My daddy says that too, Bora told him. He says getting mad doesn't fix things. Talking fixes things. Your father is very wise. The other Krathen guards had been watching from a distance. Now they came forward as well. They knelt and showed their helmets to the children. Each helmet was unique, with different decorations and symbols. The cubs were delighted. They clicked questions that Elder Krath translated. What did this symbol mean? Why was this part blue? How heavy was it? Could cubs wear them when they grew up? The guards answered every question patiently. Taman watched with satisfaction. This was the outcome he had hoped for. Not just returned helmets, but understanding between species. A medical officer approached the bench. Dr. Sunja was a human who worked in the station's medical bay. She had heard about yesterday's events and wanted to see the cubs for herself. Ambassador Elder, she greeted them. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Doctor, Elder Krath said. Please join us. Sunja sat down with a smile. I brought some treats. I checked that they're safe for Vrixian cubs. Just some sweet fruits. She held up a container. That is very kind of you, Elder Krath said. Sunja called the cubs over. They came immediately when they saw the food. She handed out pieces of fruit to each one. There you go. Growing cubs need good food. The smallest cub clicked something. Elder Krath translated with amusement. It says thank you and asks if you are a nest mother. Sunja laughed. I am a mother, yes. I have 2 children back on Earth, a son who is 10 and a daughter who is 6. When I heard about yesterday, I thought of them. They're always taking things and exploring. All young ones are the same, it seems, Elder Krath observed. In the important ways, yes. Sunja watched the cubs eating. They're curious, they're energetic, and they're learning constantly. That doesn't change across species. One of the Krathen guards stood and stretched. We must return to our duties, but perhaps we could visit the cubs again. They have questions about warrior traditions. They would like that, Elder Krath said. As would I. My people have much to learn from yours. And we from yours, Thren replied. And especially from the humans. After the guards left, more visitors came to the garden. Ambassador Velnus arrived with a Synthari child specialist. They wanted to observe the cubs and take notes about human child-rearing methods. A delegation from the aquatic collective came, their environmental suits sloshing with water. They had young ones too and wanted to share experiences. The garden became a gathering place. Different species sat together watching their children play. They shared stories and advice. The barriers between cultures seemed less important here, with children as the common ground. Bora and the cubs had moved on from building blocks. Now they were playing a chasing game. The cubs were very fast with their 6 legs, but Bora was clever and could change direction quickly. They ran around the garden, clicking and laughing. They're happy, Elder Krath said softly. I cannot remember the last time I saw them this happy. Play is important, Taemin said. Human children who play grow into healthy adults. I imagine it's the same for all species. Yes, but my people have forgotten this. We have been so focused on discipline and order that we forgot about joy. Elder Krath paused. The cubs were not being malicious yesterday. They were seeking joy, and I was ready to punish them severely for it. But you didn't, Sunja pointed out. You listened to Ambassador Taemin. You chose a different path, thanks to human wisdom. Taemin shook his head. Not wisdom, experience. Humans have made every mistake possible when raising children. We've learned from those mistakes. Now we're just sharing what we've learned. The day continued peacefully. The cubs played until they were tired, then napped in a sunny spot. Bora sat with them, reading a book. The adults talked quietly, building friendships across species lines. Captain Young Su, the station commander, came by in the afternoon. He was a stern-looking man with gray in his hair, but he smiled when he saw the sleeping cubs. I heard this is where the famous helmet thieves are hiding, he said. Elder Krath tensed, but Taemin chuckled. The V. 3 months had passed since the helmet incident. The Galactic Council station had changed in small but significant ways. The changes started quietly, almost unnoticed. But they spread like ripples in water, touching every corner of the station and beyond. Ambassador Taemin sat in his office reviewing diplomatic reports. Bora was at the station's learning center with the Vrixian cubs and other alien children. She went there every day now. The children learned together, played together, and slowly built the foundation for future galactic peace. A chime sounded at his door. Come in, Taemin called. Guard Thren entered. The massive Krathan warrior had to duck to fit through the doorway, but his posture was relaxed and friendly. He carried a data pad. Ambassador, forgive the interruption. I bring a request from my homeworld. Please sit. Taemin gestured to a reinforced chair designed for large species. What can I do for you? Thren sat carefully. My government has heard about what happened here, about the cubs and the helmets, about your method of handling the situation. They are interested in learning more about human child-rearing practices. Really? Taemin was surprised but pleased. Yes. Our traditional methods have always been strict. Cubs are disciplined harshly for any transgression, but we are seeing problems. Many young Krathan grow up fearful and unable to make decisions independently. Our military leaders are concerned. Warriors need confidence, not fear. That's very insightful, Taemin said. Thren continued. After meeting the Vrixian cubs, after seeing how patience worked better than punishment, I reported to my superiors. They want to send observers to study human families. They want to learn what you call patience protocols. Taemin smiled at the term. We don't really call it that. We just call it parenting. But yes, I can arrange for cultural exchanges. Human families would be happy to share their experiences. Thank you, Ambassador. Thren stood to leave, then paused. I must tell you something. I have 3 cubs of my own back home. Before coming here, I raised them the traditional Krathan way. Strict rules. Harsh punishment for mistakes. They obeyed me, but they also feared me. He looked down at his large hands. After the helmet incident, I started calling them every day. I talked to them differently. I asked about their interests. I listened to their problems. I apologized for being too harsh. His voice grew thick with emotion. Last week, my youngest cub told me he loves me. He never said that before. Never dared to. Timon felt his own throat tighten. That's wonderful, Thren. It is because of you. Because you showed me a better way. The guard placed his fist over his heart in a Krathan salute. Thank you, Ambassador. After Thren left, Timon sat quietly for a moment. This was what diplomacy should be, he thought. Not just treaties and trade agreements, real connection between beings. His communicator buzzed. It was Captain Young-Su. Ambassador, please come to the command center when you can. There's something you need to see. Timon made his way to the command center. The room was filled with displays showing various parts of the galaxy. Young-Su stood at the main console with Security Chief Hyun-Woo. What's going on? Timon asked. Young-Su gestured to a display. We've been tracking something interesting. Data requests about human child development have increased by 300% in the last 3 months. Diplomatic channels are filled with questions about human family structures, education methods, and discipline techniques. The helmet. Incident is becoming famous, Hyun-Woo added with a grin, or infamous depending on who you ask. Young-Su pulled up more data. The Vrixian homeworld has implemented new childcare guidelines based on human methods. The Krathan Military Academy is revising their training for young recruits. The Centauri have created an entire research institute dedicated to studying human child psychology. That's unexpected, Timon admitted. There's more. Young-Su showed him another report. The Aquatic Collective has invited human teachers to their colony worlds. The silicon-based species from Sector 7 want human advisors for their youth development programs. Even the isolationist void dwellers have sent diplomatic inquiries. Timon read through the reports with growing amazement. What started as 3 cubs taking helmets had somehow become a galactic movement. Why now? He wondered aloud. Humans have been part of the galactic community for 30 years. Why is everyone suddenly interested in how we raise children? Hyun-Woo had an answer. Because you made it visible. Before, we were just the warrior species, the ones who fought off the Scourge invasion, the ones with the big ships and powerful weapons. Other species respected our strength but didn't think we had anything else to offer. But the helmet incident showed something different, Young-Su continued. It showed human patience, human understanding, human wisdom about growth and learning. And more importantly, it showed that human methods actually work. The cubs returned the helmets undamaged, Hyun-Woo said. They learned naturally. They became friends with Bo-Ra, and now, 3 months later, they're model students at the Learning Center. Results speak louder than theories. Timon thought about this. So other species are reconsidering their own methods? Exactly. Young-Su pulled up more data. Look at this. Juvenile crime rates are dropping on Vrixian colonies that adopted human-style patient parenting. Krathan military recruits show better leadership skills when trained with encouragement instead of fear. The data is compelling. Ambassador Velnius entered the command center. The Centauri diplomat had become a frequent visitor to human areas of the station. He was writing a book about human child development. Ah, Ambassador Timon. I hope to find you here. Velnius approached with his usual logical calm. I bring news from the Galactic Council. They wish to recognize your contribution to interspecies understanding. That's not necessary, Timon said. Nevertheless, it is happening. Velnius pulled up an official document. The Council has created a new position, Ambassador of Youth and Development. They want you to fill this role. Me? But I'm already the Earth's representative. This would be in addition to your current duties. The role would involve traveling to different worlds, sharing human knowledge about raising young, and helping species develop better methods for their own children. Timon sat down heavily. This was much bigger than he'd expected. I don't know if I'm qualified. You handled a crisis that could have caused diplomatic disaster, Velnius pointed out. You did it through patience and cultural knowledge, and most importantly, you were right. The cubs did return the helmets eventually, exactly as you predicted. That demonstrates both wisdom and understanding. Young-Su nodded. The galaxy needs this, Ambassador. Too many species are struggling with their youth. Depression, rebellion, violence. Human methods offer an alternative. But humans don't have all the answers. Taimin protested. We make mistakes too. We have troubled children and broken families. True, Velnus agreed. But you have something most species lack. You have thousands of years of recorded mistakes and solutions. You have studied child psychology extensively. You have developed methods that balance freedom and structure. Other species can learn from both your successes and your failures. Hyunwoo added, and you have something else. You have empathy. You didn't just solve the helmet problem. You understood what the Cubs needed, what Elder Krath needed, what the Krathan guards needed. That's rare. Taimin looked at the data on the screens. Reports from dozens of worlds, requests for help, questions about human methods. These weren't just academic inquiries. These were species trying to help their own children grow up healthier and happier. I'll need to discuss this with Bora, he said finally. This position would mean more travel. She should have a say in that. Of course, Velnus said. Take your time to decide. Later that evening, Taimin picked up Bora from the learning center. She ran to him excitedly, her bag bouncing on her back. Daddy, guess what? The Cubs learned to write in Korean today. And I learned some Vrixian clicking sounds. And we're planning a play about friendship for the parents next week. That's wonderful, sweetie. He took her hand as they walked. I need to talk to you about something important. They went to their quarters and sat together on the couch. Taimin explained about the new position, the travel it would require, and what it would mean for their lives. Bora listened carefully. She was only 7, but she understood more than many adults gave her credit for. Would we help kids on other planets? She asked. Yes. We'd teach their parents and teachers how to help them. Like you helped Elder Krath help the Cubs? Exactly like that. Bora thought about this. Would I still get to play with the Cubs? Sometimes. But we'd also meet children from other worlds. Would they be nice? Most of them, yes. Some might be scared of humans at first, but you'd help them understand we're friendly. Bora nodded slowly. Mama always said helping people is important, before she went to the colony. Taimin's wife was a terraforming engineer on a distant colony world. They talked regularly, but saw each other rarely. It was hard, but they both knew their work was important. Yes, she did say that. What do you think? Should we take this job? Bora looked at her father seriously. The Cubs were bad when they took the helmets, but they're my friends now. If we can help more kids become friends, we should do it. Taimin hugged his daughter. When did you get so wise?